guys were cutting 52 counselors with 2 or 8.
Just a minute. I gotta leave probably by 6, and I know your program isn't gonna start till then. I just want to tell your friends.
Sure. Matter of fact, we will. I know that you can't. You're only one person. There's a whole bunch of them. Oh, you remember? put it down.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, see you later.
Thank you.
I don't want to do that. Yeah, in fact, I think
The lady came by who one of my colleagues. Way back then. Excuse me. Building that dome stadium down in San Diego. We did it not unlike what we're doing. We got people that see nice. Both sales tax, 1.5%, which generated $30 million a year for 5 years. It was terminated at the end of the 5th year and could not be reinstated. We had another go to the decline. And they passed it, and 5 times 30 is 150 million. It's underway. It'll be open this time next year. Well, for starters, we have a World Football League superb right there. We're competing with the world. Nothing gets done. Electronic jacks on the floor and all that stuff.
great idea. That kind of a combination.
Yeah, well, what we did was we built it with a suspension roof. It's got hands. It's got hands. So that there's no pillars and no impediments. And it's just a huge expanse. You can hold the seats back. Step up the beach. And it's downtown. You need to come see it. I told you guys don't take care of it. People talk about that, you know. I found my favorite.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Now your attention, please. Good evening and welcome. My name is Rose Amador, and I'm going to serve as your Mistress of Ceremonies this evening. This event is a benefit for 1992 Voter Education Project of the Latino Issues Forum. The Latino Issues Forum of Santa Clara County is a nonprofit cooperation whose purpose is to research, formulate, and promote policy changes. To begin our program, I'd like to call on San Jose Mayor Susan Hammer.
Thank you very, very much, Rose, and good evening. It really is nice to be with you. And as I look out around this wonderful crowd, I see a lot of people who are responsible for getting me elected. And to those of you who participated in my campaign and encourage your friends to vote for me and raise a little money, I really want to thank you. You know, there's nothing more important that you can be involved in this time around, however, is exactly what you're here about tonight, and that's to raise monies to support the campaign. What is it? What are we calling it? Campaign 1992, or which is very simply to go out and register Hispanics, Latinos to vote. And then after you register them to vote, let's get everybody to actually vote on June 2nd. As I said this morning in a press conference with our distinguished guest, former Mayor Henry Cisneros, this, I believe, it could be a real watershed year. You know, the choices that we are going to make in 1992, both in the city of San Jose, as well as several of our legislators. There's an open assembly seat in San Jose, to name one example, 2 U.S. Senate seats, and a president. Those are going to be people that are going to guide us, represent you and me into the 21st century. And if you don't think every vote counts, I'm here to tell you that when you win by 1,383 votes, as I did, every vote counts, my friends. So I just want to encourage you to not only give your money, but to really get your friends to help register voters. We're going to do, by the way, a huge voter registration campaign through another one of my favorite projects, which is the Giants. And in fact, we're kicking that off tomorrow. We're already out at flea markets and shopping centers and all over town registering people to vote. That's going to help this effort. That's going to help this effort tremendously, because we're going to be in some of the same areas that you are, and you just can't have too many people out encouraging people to vote. I think about 20% of the eligible Hispanics, Latinos in San Jose. Only 20% are actually voted in the last election, or actually registered to vote or voted in the last election? Voted in the last election. That's not good. That's not good at all, especially when you look at the important races that are up. So I certainly will be doing everything I can to assist your efforts. And again, I really commend all of you who are here to support this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Hammer. I do apologize for the close quarters. We planned on moving out to the patio, but can't complain about the rain, right? Okay. Before we begin with our speakers, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the presence of a few individuals that are with us today. We are honored to have with us the Supervisor for the County of Santa Clara, Ron Gonzalez. We also have with us Assemblyman Dominic Cortese. We have with us the Undersheriff for the County of Santa Clara, Ruben Diaz. The San Jose Chief of Police, Luke Covarrubias. We have from the Central Labor Council, Rick Sawyer. We have the San Jose firefighters with us. We don't have to worry about fires. San Jose firefighters. I'd also like to introduce the City Council candidates that are with us this afternoon, and that is Margie Fernandez, candidate for District 4. Carl Lindstrom, candidate for District 4. Terry Hayden, candidate for District 8. Charlotte Powers, candidate for District 2. Isaú Herrera, candidate for Municipal Court Judge. Representing Maria Elena Chavez is B. Robinson, or Tex Mandy?
No, Mandy.
Mandy? Where is she? Oh, there she is, in the back here. Candidate for District 8, City Council. And I would also like to point out, there's a little chart over here, and we'd like to acknowledge these organizations who have contributed significantly to this event this afternoon. And at this time, I would like to call B. Robinson to the podium for some very special presentations.
Thanks, Rose. As you know, for every event, there has to be the workhorses, and Pete and I thought we had everything together, being the type of people that we are. And naturally, one of the biggest things that we thought we had together, we did not have together, and that was the food. And so luckily, we had Michelle Mendoza, Pete's lovely wife, who we were able to call on, and she, at the very last moment, put it all together for us. And so on behalf of all of you who are eating, I'm going to give this to Michelle Mendoza. And I forgot, and I apologize for that. I want to thank all of the staff at Moxa for all the work they did with the food, the setup, and after you all leave, I guess they're going to have to clean up after you, so we want to thank them for that. We've been very fortunate in having a lot of volunteer support for what Latino Issue Forum says, and we also are now beginning to see the fruit of our labor in terms of getting some financial support. We want to, although there are other people who have donated money, we want to recognize one of the major donor that we have at this point, and I think you'll all be pleasantly surprised. And I want to read what this thing says. I'm so blind now, though, but here goes. And it's called the Latino Issues Forum of Santa Clara County. It says, "In appreciation for your generous support for Latino empowerment for our 1992 voter education project, this Assemblyman Cortese has pledged $10,000 towards our effort."
Thank you very, very much for the beautiful tribute. You know, my career in public office goes back to almost this very location. When I ran for office, and I see a number of familiar faces around here who remember, when I first ran for office, for county office, we were struggling with an incumbent who refused, just adamantly refused, to allow us to have a clinic, a health clinic. And we had very little or nothing east of 101, east of Bayshore. We fought, Sophie, we fought and fought. We won an election, and just after that election, we initiated a program that gave us a health clinic right down here on Jackson and McKee, which ultimately or eventually became the Election Brothers Hospital. And the health clinic, as you know, was moved across the street. And in addition to that, as I muse about Latino, Hispanic issues, I remember my career here in local government as we fought even harder via the EOC, ESO, that I remember spending hour upon hour participating in, driving home at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning as the sun was rising, and those efforts to assure equal rights and minority rights and a forum or a platform for those who were unrepresented. Then I further mused about the so-called Santa Clara Plan and the contribution or participation of Jose Vasquez when we had a grand ceremony at the county building, during which we signed the so-called Santa Clara Plan that guaranteed equal employment, minority rights with regard to employment, and that was signed by a number of major organizations, corporations in this county. And then we went on with the issue of selective certification in the sheriff's office, and ultimately designed an ordinance that required that Hispanics, Latinos, be certified selectively from a general list so that we could build proper representation within the Santa Clara County Sheriff's Office. Those are just a few issues that I've been able to help you with, that you've been able to help me with. So there has been progress, and I see this today as a landmark occasion in terms of building upon at least those few landmark occasions that I remember in the past. I congratulate you. Best wishes, good luck. The format was set in the past, I think, to bring us here today to this occasion, which I obviously am sure is going to lead to even further progress and proper, fair, equal representation to everyone, regardless of race, color, or creed. Thank you very much.
At this time, it is my pleasure to introduce to you the President of the Latino Issues Forum, Pete Carrillo.
Thank you very much, and I'm going to be very brief because I know you all want to hear from our special guest, but let me once again thank the Moxa, my wife, and her staff for really doing a great job of getting this building together for us tonight and getting the food together for us tonight. So I want to thank them once again. Want to obviously thank our special guest who traveled from San Antonio, not only to be here with us tonight, but he's been with Councilmember Shirakawa all day. As a matter of fact, this morning we had a very successful news conference that Mr. Cisneros, as well as our mayor, participated in to kick off our 1992 voter registration project. So I wanted to thank him for making the special effort to get here today. Let me just very briefly tell you what we did in 1991, and I don't need to expand on that because you all know what we did with respect to redistricting. We fundamentally changed how redistricting is going to be approached from now on. In the past, as many of you know, that process has been a closed door process. We managed to open it up, and open it up in a very significant way where we had very significant participation by the public. The fact that we were able to get 2 ballot measures on the 1990 election year relating to the San Jose School District and the San Jose Evergreen Community College School District is one indication. The fact that we were able to, along with Supervisor Ron Gonzalez, change the supervisorial districts is another example of our efforts at the city level with respect to redistricting there, and the good work that Council Members Shirakawa and Council Member Alvarado and our mayor did with us. We were able to really change how that whole process works. There was a lot of people involved in that process. Many of you are in this room. Many of you attended our public hearings that we asked you to come to. Many of you attended the news conferences that we had, and many of you did a lot of work to enable us to successfully have redistricting plans that I believe are going to work for our community in the long term. One person that stands out in my judgment in terms of having a significant impact on our ability to be successful in this process is here with us today, and I know that our guest speaker is going to speak a little bit more about him. But I wanted to single out Joaquin Avila, who's in the audience with us. All we really had to do was have Joaquin with us at meetings, and we were able to make sure that the people in the meeting room listened to the Latino Issues Forum seriously. And so for that, Joaquin, let me thank you and your staff, and I know that Linda's here and Greg is not here with us today, but I know he did a lot of great work. So that leads us to what I view and what the Latino Issues Forum views as the next logical step, and that is voter registration and get out the vote. It's very basic. We intend to register people for the June election and for the November election, and we intend to get those folks out to the polls and actually go out to vote. You can talk to B. Robinson, who is our director, and her staff, who is here tonight, about the specifics of our project, but let me simply say that as effective as we were with the 1991 redistricting program that we put in place, we're going to be even more successful with your help with respect to voter registration and get out to vote. So with that, I will turn it back over to Rose, and thank all of you for coming here tonight, despite the weather, but I think it's holding up. Thank you very much.
Now I would like to call another distinguished individual who will introduce our guest of honor.
The item that we have to do is that, if you don't know it, is that San Jose is going to host a first annual International San Jose Mariachi Conference. And that'll be July 9th to the 12th, and it's going to be a hell of an event, so everybody line up to get your tickets. Thank you very much. I was really getting upset because I think people took a little too much time, because I wanted to read 5 pages of a resume of Henry Cisneros. I first saw Henry Cisneros on C-SPAN, and I only turned C-SPAN on to go to sleep. But Henry was talking about the foreign policy of the United States with Latin America, and I just bolted up off the couch and said, hell, I got to listen to this guy, and he's a tremendous guy. Let me give you just a few things about him. Henry Cisneros is chairman of Cisneros Asset Management Company, a national investment management firm, and Cisneros Benefit Group. They manage a portfolio of over $200 million, and hopefully they'll get some of our City of San Jose money. He hosts Texans, a 1-hour television show produced quarterly in Texas, and Adelante, a national daily Spanish-language radio commentary. Mr. Cisneros was recently elected deputy chairman of the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas. He is also co-chair of the National Hispanic Leadership Agenda, an organization committed to defining the common policy interests of the nation's Hispanic population. He does it well. He is a member of the Rockefeller Foundation Board of Trustees, chairman of the advisory committee on the construction of San Antonio's Alamo Dome, which is building a 65,000-seat stadium, and they don't even have a professional football team, and that's how powerful he was. He's also chairman of the National Civic League. Among many things, he was born and raised in San Antonio. He holds a Bachelor of Arts and a master's degree in urban and regional planning from Texas A&M University. He later received another master's from Harvard University. He also earned a a doctorate degree in public administration from George Washington University. We know he's well educated. He's a hell of a man, and there's still about, like I say, 4.5 pages. But without further ado, a guy I respect, a guy that is the leader of the Hispanic community in the United States. We want to welcome, a big round of welcome applause for Mr. Henry Cisneros.
Thank you very, 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 very much. Well, we've come a long way, no? Where you can have a voter registration rally in a place as beautiful as this. What a beautiful facility this is. When I saw it, I was very impressed. And we owe a lot of expressions of congratulations to everyone who's been associated with building this organization and building a facility like this. And I noticed that Esther is over here. Felicidades on this organization. As you walk through it, you will see the services that are offered here, from youth services to services for senior citizens, therapy, physical training. And I understand they just got a grant, $2.8 million to build a senior citizen housing complex on the adjacent site. Work is going on to build a major youth facility just down the street with a gym and a place for our young people to be able to recreate. And that Blanca Santos is now working on putting in place a heritage plaza and garden for the Latino community. So this whole area will be transformed, and it's a beautiful, beautiful thing to be very proud of. Felicidades a toda la comunidad de San Jose en este esfuerzo. I've had the good fortune of spending the day with George. I say good fortune, except that he has run me into the ground. I mean, I don't think there was a minute left that he didn't fill, but it was a wonderful thing to see. Early this morning, some of the leaders of the education community, as we had some television tapings, and then to participate, as he said, in the press conference with Pete. And by the way, I think Pete does a great job. I've had the chance to meet him and work with him over the years, but to see him in action today in his own right, I'm very impressed with Pete Carrillo. Felicidades, Pete. Very seriously, good work. To go to the schools, we had the opportunity to visit Mr. Renteria over at Silver Hill and also to Silver Creek. All right, but it's by the hills. And several of the other schools. And then one of the highlights of the day, everything has been a highlight, but to go over to CET and see what has to be one of the finest training programs. Ladies and gentlemen, I know it's easy to take things for granted when you live in your own community. But to see what Russ and Erlinda and others have built over there in CET, let me tell you, that is a model that this country would do well to copy, and it's a treasure that you need to support. And it's always a treat to come back and see friends, friends like Ron Gonzalez. Let me tell you, I have had the opportunity to work with him when he was the mayor of Sunnyvale. I had the great, great honor of being able to come and spend a day campaigning for him when he was running for supervisor. And the best thing about the political progress that Latinos are making is that we're electing good people who do a good job when they're elected. And this guy is an example of what is possible. And today was the filing deadline, and he drew opposition, but he is going to roll over his opposition, and he's going to be supervisor for another time. And we hope that there are great, great things for him, because he's the kind of guy who can hold any public office in this state or in this land. And there are many others of you in this room that are looking to public office, and I would say keep going, keep driving forward, keep building, and good luck to you all who are running for city council and the other various positions. I'm proud to be here today to participate in this voter registration effort, because as Willie Velasquez, the founder of Southwest Voter, and the heart, the conscience of so many efforts in the Latino community said a few years ago, su voto es su voz. Simple concept, repeated easily, but very profound. In a democracy, without the vote, there is no voice. Because in a democracy, the way we transfer power something that is done in other nations only with guns and bullets and force. In a democracy, the transference of power, the change of political direction, the reallocation of resources, the most massive changes occur with the vote. The President of the United States can be changed when the people decided and vote him out of office. Most powerful person in the world, commanding massive resources, can be voted out of office with the vote. But when one doesn't register, and when one doesn't vote, and one doesn't participate, then all of that voice is gone. Our community has some tremendous potentials and tremendous problems. Potentials in the sense that we're growing so rapidly. The Latino community in the United States grew by 56% in the decade of the 1980s, and about that rate or faster in California. Now think of that. 56% means that we grew by half again our total population in 1980, half again that size by 1990. It took us 300 years of accumulation of population to reach the population that we had in 1980, and then it grew by 1/2 its total historic accumulation in one 10-year span. And that's going to continue to happen. We're going to see another 40% increase that'll take us to 31 million Latinos in the United States by just after the year 2000. And it is the Latino population rate of growth that has more to do than any other factor with the fact that that this decade, sometime in 1997 or so, California will become majority Latino, African American, and Asian, a majority of the population of the largest state in America. And it is the rate of growth of the Latino community that drives that more than any other thing. So it's a phenomenal set of potentials that exist there. Now, to translate that mass of humanity into citizens, and many of whom are not, and to translate that mass of humanity into registered voters, many of whom are not, and to translate that mass of humanity into participating voters on election day who can elect people is one of the challenges before us. And it's a big challenge. But it's a challenge that can be met, and when it is, the Latino community of this state will not only change communities by electing people like George and Blanca and Ron Gonzalez and others, change this community, but is also going to change this state and also going to change our country. What do I mean by that? Well, first of all, it does make a difference when you elect people. It does make a difference. All over this country we have seen what happens when Latinos are elected to public office and when the people hold them accountable. What it means is you end up with centers like this that have community development block grant money in them which could not be allocated if somebody wasn't paying attention. I mean, it's easy to take for granted what a Latino public official can do, but it is immense in terms of the access to power and access to resources. And that's why it was so significant to have someone like Gloria Molina, for example, go on the Board of Supervisors of Los Angeles County. One of the most important local public offices in America. And there she sits, raising questions, asking questions, directing resources where they never went before. You bet it matters if we elect Latinos to public office, and if we hold them accountable, and if we make sure that they stay close to the people. So yes, things would change at the local level, electing people. And they'll change in this state, too, because it's just a matter of time before we start electing Latinos who are today members of boards of supervisors and city council members, state assemblymen and senators, and elect them to statewide offices in this state. I don't know whether it's going to be treasurer, or I don't know whether it's going to be controller, or I don't know whether it's going to be commissioner of education, or what it's going to be, but Latinos are very soon going to offer themselves and be elected to statewide offices in California, and then it will be governor and senator from California. Mark my words, that'll happen. Not long before. You have a Latino governor of California named Gonzalez or Hernandez or Morales or whatever name he or she may be. You have a Latino governor of California or a Latino United States Senator from California, and let me tell you what, the demands will be overwhelming that person coming from the most powerful state in America, representing a constituency that is important not just in California, but in Texas and Arizona and Florida and New York, and Illinois and everywhere else where there are concentrations of Latino, the demands will be overwhelming for that person to go to New Hampshire and say, today I'm announcing my candidacy for the presidency of the United States. And that is going to happen too. And it can all start from right here in California. I mean it. This is not exaggeration. Unfortunately, many of our people say, well, you know, one vote doesn't count. Well, let me tell you what. In 1960, there was an election between a bright young man named John Kennedy and Richard Nixon. They debated, and they fought to a very close finish. In the wee hours of the morning after the election, it was clear that John Kennedy had won, but only by a sliver. The number of votes that John Kennedy won in America were the equivalent of 1 vote per precinct in every precinct in the country. Now, I don't know what precinct you vote in, but my guess is it probably votes 1,500 people or something like that. That means that the election would have been the difference between 751 votes to 749 votes in that precinct. That difference, 1 vote per precinct in every precinct in America, was the margin by which John Kennedy became president of the United States. And what a difference historically that made. In San Antonio in 1977, we were attempting to put in a system of districting, single-member districts for our city. We fought hard, we battled hard, and we won by 2,000 votes. Now, there's 200 precincts in the city of San Antonio. So you divide 200 into the 2,000 vote margin, and we won by 10 votes per precinct. And the result has been phenomenal. The margin was close, but the outcome has been not even close to what we had before. I mean, what we ended up with was a complete remaking of the city of San Antonio, its direction and its politics. For the first time, we went from a city council that had had 2 Latinos out of 9 to a city council that had 6 minorities out of 11 on the next council because of that vote. A majority of people, Hispanic and African American, putting money in neighborhoods that never had it before, streets and drainage and fair police services and neighborhood recreational facilities and swimming pools for the kids and libraries, and the city of San Antonio has been changed because of that vote, which was 10 votes for precincts. So never let anyone say a single vote doesn't matter, because every single vote counts. Now, many of our people, and in California it's clearly true, believe that in order to become citizens they have to give up allegiance to their country of birth, whether it be Mexico, El Salvador, or wherever else they may come from. We have to persuade people that they have an allegiance to this country once they've made a decision to stay here. I understand the frame of mind. My grandfather was 93 years of old when he died, and he had lived in this country for 50 years. He had raised all of his children, sent them to the army. They served in World War II, and still, at the end of it, he believed that he would have to abandon Mexico in order to become a U.S. citizen. That mindset operates in our communities. But I think more and more it's possible to demonstrate to people that if they have made a decision that they're going to be here, once they have relinquished the hope that they're going to return, if they've made the decision they're going to be here, then they owe as much to the future, to their children and their grandchildren, by their voice, by their vote, as they do to the past. And that's an important argument that we need to make. We need to make people citizens. We need to register people to vote. And then we need to help them learn how to participate and how to vote. Many of them say that it doesn't matter whether you elect someone to office. They're not going to help us. They're not going to do anything for us. But more and more what we're seeing is that it does matter when you elect Latinos to public office, and that it does matter in terms then of voter behavior. Voting behavior does begin to change because people feel the representation, feel the voice that sits around the table of power representing them. So this kickoff that has been put together by the Latino Issues Forum, this work is very, very important, and I just applaud all of you who are here to help raise some funds so that that work can go forward. But I'd argue that you ought to go beyond raising funds. I'd argue that you ought to spend some Saturdays walking some streets. I'd argue to you tonight that you ought to give it some personal energy and time, which is even more precious than the money that you can give. Because what we need here in an effort like this is hands and brains and feet that can walk house to house and block to block and register people and persuade people. And there's no better example than those of you who believe, or you wouldn't be here this evening. One of the most exciting things about the Latino future is the fact that we have organizations and leaders who are at work on these questions, and they're people of conscience and conviction. I referred earlier to the Southwest Voter Registration Project, which Willie Velasquez founded, now headed by Andy Hernandez. And I would say that I can't think of another organization that has done more in the last few years to change the Latino destiny than the Mexican American Legal Defense and Education Fund. At least in our part of the country, in Texas, they have filed the lawsuits that brought down an unequal system of school finance by a vote of 9-0 on the Supreme Court. They made such a persuasive case that even the conservatives on the Supreme Court could not allow that inequity to stand in the school system in Texas. And now they have been successful in a court case that declares the system of higher education unequal in Texas. If you draw a line from Corpus Christi to San Antonio to El Paso, south of that line in Texas is a quarter of the population of the state, 1/4. And 70% of the Latinos in Texas live south of that line. Yet, the educational funding for research is about 2% of the total of the state. PhD programs, there are 500 PhD programs in Texas. 3 are south of that line. 497 are on the other side of the line. Our people don't have access to the same educational quality. MALDEF and LULAC made the case, and the courts have gone along. That spirit of filing lawsuits, that spirit of activism is very critical to our community. And thank goodness there exist people who have done it. I see a man here tonight who was recognized earlier, Joaquin Avila. But Joaquin worked for MALDEF for a lot of years. I first had the opportunity to meet him when he was a student, a law student. And Joaquin has worked tirelessly over the years with MALDEF and now has a very unique private practice. He's a very smart man, degree from one of the best law schools in the country. And he could be making a lot of money in his own private practice pursuing the normal venues of law. But he's chosen to make his life filing voting rights cases like the one that makes it possible for this county and this region to elect Latinos. A few years ago, I picked up a national magazine, and there was an award in this national magazine that were picking out people who had done particularly unique and important and courageous things. And it had the Giraffe Award. The Giraffe Award for someone who was willing to stick his neck out. And the winner of the Giraffe Award nationally was Joaquin Avila, and he's still sticking his neck out. Well, the long and short is, as Pete said earlier, it is critical to change the structure of law so that Latinos can register and be represented fairly in redistricting and be represented fairly in bodies of power. But then there's only so much those who file the lawsuits can do. There's only so much change that can be imposed upon the system. At some point, it's a matter of what we believe, what our people believe, and what our community believes, and what our community is willing to do. And that means making these changes that are involved in getting people to register. It's very critical in getting people to vote. I come from a state which has been thought of as very conservative and where discrimination has been very, very, very stark over the years. Yet there are 3,000 Latino elected officials in the United States, and fully 1/2, 1,500 of the 3,000 come from Texas. Now, there's no reason in the world why this state, which has more than twice as many Latinos as Texas, more resources, and more educated Latinos than any other place in the United States, ought not be electing the lion's share of local public officials in the country from this state. There's no reason why that ought to be. And when you do, from the length and breadth of this state, from the south to the north, when you do, you're going to change America. Because you're going to produce some examples of leadership, and you're going to break some new ground here. And you're going to send us some national leaders to Washington, and eventually, as I said, to the presidential primaries. Now that's going to happen, ladies and gentlemen, in our lifetime. That is going to happen in our lifetime. That's a promise. If you work to do that seed work and do that grassroots work, the essence of which is democracy. Su voto es su voz. Su voto es su voz. Así trabaja en una democracia y depende de nosotros hacerlo real. Thank you very much for allowing me to come over and be part of this.
Thank you, Henry Cisneros, with another presentation. So we need movement and Lou's cooperation and not stopping the car or giving them a ticket. I have a couple announcements.